Welcome back to another VBA tutorial. So we are on part 2 of our series where we are working with command bar and command bar control objects. And so kind of just to give a little bit of a recap on what we covered in the last video, we first introduced the topic of command bars. Really all a command bar is, for example, you select a cell and you right click that cell and you see these two little wonderful black panes pop up, at least if you're in dark mode. Um, all this is those are command bars. So each command bar is basically like a little pane like this, and those panes contain different controls. The controls are either the buttons, the drop downs, or in some cases, they're actually even shortcut menus and things like that. And actually, they come in a lot of different flavors. There's things like combo boxes, there's a bunch of other stuff. So command bar controls come in lots of different flavors. The command bar themselves, they're kind of limited in the sense of they really only come in pop-ups, shortcut menus, and then I believe drop-down menus, if I'm thinking right. No, menu bar, shortcut menu, and then like a pop-up. So, there's not a lot of different command bar types, but the command bar controls, there's a bunch of them. So we kind of got an understanding of that. We understood that we can basically dump all that information down here. What we're going to be doing in this video is we're going to be basically manipulating a particular control. And then what we're also going to do is we're going to actually create our own customizable control. And then we're going to add it to the ribbon, with the big caveat that when we add a control to the ribbon through VBA, we can only add it to the add-ins tab on the ribbon. So with that being said, let's jump back into VBA. Alrighty, so this is basically what I would say almost left off on the last video. So at this point, this should look pretty much really familiar. All I've really added at this point is I've added 2 more lines where I declare some more variables. So the first one is declaring our command bar controls object. And so that's really just a collection of all the controls that exist on any given command bar. And then we're going to want to work with just one particular command bar control when we're looping through it. And so I need to declare that object as well. This should look really familiar from the last one. We're just simply grabbing the application, so the Excel application command bars, so all of them, and then we're grabbing the command bar that exists at index 38. And so the one that exists at index 38 is the cell command bar. I did want to tell people, like, technically you can use the key method to select a command bar from the collection. I would be cautious on that though, just because some of them do have duplicate names. So like cell appears twice. And so if you did cell, it's probably just going to return the first instance. Okay, so at this point, this should look all familiar. What are we going to do next? Well, let's grab all the controls. And so how would that look? Well, we're going to set our command bar controls object equal. I'm going to call my command bar item, and then I'm going to go down to the controls property. This returns that controls collection. So we're going to loop through each command bar control. So we're going to say for each command bar control in command bar controls, do something. At this point, I kind of want to just take a step back really quick. So some people might ask and they say, Alex, you got command bar control, but there's command bar pop-up, command bar button, combo box. Why didn't you declare those ones? It depends. In this particular situation, because I'm looping over so many, I can't guarantee they're always going to be the same type. And if I can't guarantee they're going to always be the same type, I go with the more general approach. This will work for all the different types. If I was to make this a button one, and then I start calling button specific properties, then there is a good chance that your code will fail. And so I really encourage people, if you don't know which type of control you're working with, go with the more general option. So that's why I did command bar control in this example. So from here, loop through each control. That's all we're doing at this point. And from here, because we're just kind of talking more about attributes, I already have some code that I wrote up. So I'm just going to use that one for at least this particular example. And so you'll notice it's pretty much identical to what we were doing in the last video, but it's now grabbing the attributes that are specific to a command bar control. Now, some are identical, other ones are very specific. So for example, caption. Caption is not on a command bar item, but it is on a command bar control. Things like description text, that is command bar control specific. Help file, help context ID is priority dropped. However, things like index, left, parent, top, type, width, visible, those are all actually found on both. But this does also give you a little bit more flexibility. So for example, you can reset your command bar control back to default use. There's an on action property. So this is where if you wanted to assign a macro to a particular command control, this is how you would do it. And just other things like that. So I encourage people, explore it a little bit and kind of see what's out there and then kind of go along with the documentation that I provide. But you'll find for the most part, they work pretty much the same. So if I run this, it just prints out a bunch of, different stuff, nothing really fancy at this point. You'll kind of see these ampersands. That's because usually when you see it, the first line is underlined. The first letter is underlined. That ampersand kind of just pops up because of that. So don't really freak out if you see that. It's really just kind of a formatting thing that VBA can't handle. And then additionally, I did kind of want to mention a note too. Certain command bar, I would say, controls only exist if the particular object that you're working with leverages those controls. So for example, if I put in my email address for the channel, so coding.sigma@gmail.com, right? So if you notice here, it looks pretty standard, right? Nothing super fancy. But if I go down and then I right click, now all of a sudden I have new controls. So normally those controls are hidden or they're not visible. They might be enabled in the sense of you can see them if you click on them, but it doesn't mean you're going to actually see them all the time. So they're only visible when you actually have an object that leverages those controls. So again, it's just something to be aware of. Sometimes you might see them, sometimes you might not. And so depending very specifically onto what object you've selected, there's a good chance that it could be very different. So again, just throwing that out there, I want to make sure people are aware of that. Also, I did provide a little bit of a data dump. So this will be on the GitHub version. That basically just populates this little table right here. And again, it will put like all the little ampersands and stuff like that, enable status and things like that. So, like hyperlinks. So you can see they're both like it's not enabled and it's not visible, things like that. What's this one? Spark lines. So it's enabled, but it's false, something like that. So just things to keep in mind. All right. So from here, we can now loop through our command bar controls. What would we naturally want to do next? Well, we probably would want to customize our command bar controls, right? So let's do that. I'm moving my notes, so just bear with me a little bit. All right, so we're going to do a new subroutine. We're going to call it adding custom controls. And so we can basically take everything we have up here. That should be fine. And then moving notes again. Oh, command bar controls. And then, oh yeah, this is the one we're going to do, the very specific one. Okay, so in this particular example, it actually is okay to change this. We are going to change this from command bar control to command bar button because we're going to add a custom button to our command bar controls collection. And so what I'm going to do is I've grabbed my command bars collection, and so I have that now. From here, I want to create a new command bar item. And so create a new command bar item. So we're going to set our command bar item equal to our command bar collection. You'll notice there is an add method, and this add method takes 4 parameters. The first one is the name, and so this is the name of your command bar. In this case, we'll give it a very special name, my special command bar. It has a position. So the position is where it will appear in the Excel application. In this example, I want it to appear on the ribbon. And so I'm going to say MSO bar top. The next parameter is if it's a menu bar. In this case, it is not a menu bar. And we'll go over this, don't worry. And then the final one is temporary. In other words, do I want this command bar to be deleted once I close the workbook? In this case, I'm okay with that. Probably in most cases, it's not going to be okay. So for example, Excel add-ins that when you enable a bunch of stuff, you probably want it to close because maybe, for example, you want the person to re-log in. That would be a perfect example of why you would want it to close. But you'll notice, because I just brought up the documentation for the add method, name, that's pretty straightforward. Position, I'll take that page next. Menu bar, true to replace the active menu bar with the new new command bar. The default value is false. More than likely, you should have it set to false because it's going to start replacing stuff, and anytime you want to replace stuff, you got to be cognizant. And then this one is pretty straightforward. If you set it to true, it will delete when the container application closes. Positions, left, command bar is docked to the left side of the application window. Bottom, floating, so this can be on top of the application window. Pop-up, right, top. I want mine to be at the top of my Excel application. Okay, so we've defined a new command bar item. Let's add a new command bar button. Add a new command bar button. So what we're going to do is we're going to set our command bar button equal. We're going to take our command bar item, so the one we just created. We're going to go into that item's controls collection, and then we're going to call the add method. And then from here, there's a couple other parameters. The first one is the type. In this case, I want mine to be an MSO control button. It's very important that in this particular example, you make it a button. We just declared it as a button. If you don't do that, you would get an error. If you had it as just a control, you get a little bit more flexibility. You can make it a button, you can make it an ActiveX button, whatever you want. There's a couple other parameters. There is an ID parameter. Usually the default value is 1. And then again, there is a temporary parameter as well. In this case, I do want that to be true. I will go over a couple other things. Let me go to the controls one. Command bar controls, no, command bar object. This is the one that's weird. It's like at the top and it throws me off a little bit. Okay, methods, no. I want the command bar controls object, and then I want the add method. Perfect, there it is. Okay, so parameter, that's one I didn't cover. These are for built-in controls. This argument is used by the container application to run the command. For custom controls, you can use this argument to send information to Visual Basic procedures, or you can use it to store information about the control, similar to a second tag or property value. So I'm guessing what that means is if you have a parameter that you want to pass through, you can. Now, it does define it as a variant data type, so I'm guessing you probably could make it anything. I haven't really tried that per se, but maybe you could even make it like an Excel range or something like that. I would kind of have to say experiment a little bit. There's also a before parameter. So this specifies where you want this particular control to be added. So you can add it before a particular control. and it will be inserted before that position. Obviously, if you don't, specify it, it's just going to throw it at the end. And then there's this ID one. Technically, you can have the ID equal the ID of another existing command button control. Be careful with that though, because it tends to inherit like all the properties for some reason, which is weird. And I think that kind of just worries me a little bit because I don't know what's going on behind the scenes. So what we're going to do next is we're going to modify the new button. Okay, and so what we'll do is we're going to say with our command bar button, what are we going to do? What we're going to end with, and then we got to define some information about it. All right. So the first thing we'll do is we'll define the style. This is basically just saying what it's going to be looking like and things like that. So we'll call that style property. And you'll notice there's a couple actually. There's a button with a caption, a button with an icon. There's a, sorry, it of course freaked out. There's a button with an icon and caption. So a lot of different stuff. In this particular example, I'm just going to do a button with a caption. And then I want to define the caption. And so we will call that caption property, and we will just pass through the string run highlight macro. Perfect. And then from here, there's some other things that we can do. What we can do is we can have it run a macro when it's clicked. So when the button is clicked, run the highlight cell macro. And so you do that by calling the onAction property, and then you pass through the name of your macro. I haven't defined the macro yet, and so you want to make sure you define it before you actually run this code. And then you can also add like a little tooltip. And so this is something where if they hover over it, it will pop up. And so it's just called tooltip text. And then say this button, when clicked, will run the highlight cell macro. Basically like that. Okay, and then really from here, you can kind of run it as is, but you want to make sure a couple things. So for example, you want to make sure the command bar item is visible. So just because you add a control doesn't mean anything about that command bar is visible. And so all that really means is you take the command bar item, so the command bar item, and you set that visible property equal to true. And so that will make sure we can see it. Just again, as a caveat, it will only add it to the add-ins tab on your Excel application. And I would assume that's probably with PowerPoint and Word as well. So very big caveat. You can customize Ribbon, but in a very limited fashion. Additionally, if you wanted to, you could add protections to it. So you can actually limit how edits that can be made to it. So what that would look like is if you, again, you take that command bar item and you go to the protection property, you could say ms bar no customize. So you can say, hey, don't customize it. In this case, I'll just leave that off, but that's there for you guys. Okay, so I need to grab my macro that I've defined. It's really simple, really, really simple. Literally all it does is it's just gonna grab sheet 1, range A1, and set the color equal to red. And so I'm gonna run this. Nothing fancy, looked like it really happened, but now you'll notice my add-ins tab has been modified. And so you'll see this custom toolbar, and if I click this, oh, you know what it probably is? I wonder. I have I don't know. Let me do this. I am going to, that's okay. Let me do this. I'm curious if I just highlight this, I want to see if it fixes it. I don't think it's going to, but you never know. So, oh, okay. So that fixed it. So now you know. Don't have two macros that are named the same within the same project, because obviously that will create all sorts of havoc. But this is basically how it would work. So now that we've clicked that button, it runs that macro. And then you can see there is a tooltip, and then this is obviously what it's displaying when it is added. So now that we've added a custom command bar, let's delete it. So maybe you're like, I don't want to keep it, so I'm going to delete it. So we'll delete custom controls. You kind of can do it at different levels if you think about it. So in this one, there's obviously that command bar item and collection. And so I'm going to, just to save time, I'm going to grab this. Actually, cool. And some of this I don't really need, but this is fine. Okay, so this is what we were just at. Let's grab the command bar item. So let's grab the command bar item we want to delete. And so in this case, we're going to set that command bar item equal to the command bar's collection. What is it? Command bar collection. We're going to call the item method. And in this case, I'm just going to pass through my special command bar. Since in this case, I really don't know its index. I probably could get it if I wanted to, but because I know the name, I would just use that. And then from here, you got a couple different options. So the highest levels, you could delete the entire command bar. Probably not going to want to do that in most situations because that deletes all the controls inside of it as well. More than likely, what you're going to want to do is delete a specific control from the command bar. This I see being more common. And so it's pretty similar to what you were, kind of doing right there. You can do the command bar item, and then you can go to the controls collection, and then you can grab the item. Now, in this case, because really there's only one there, you could technically just use the index. And also, I believe there is a name property, if I remember correctly. I can't remember, to be 100% honest. No, I don't think there is. But maybe it's the ID I'm thinking of then. I think you can set the ID too. So I'd have to double check. I'll probably just put notes in the GitHub code. But you basically just need to specify it either using the key method or the index method. And then from here, you can just basically delete it. Now, in this particular example, because there's only one control, it's going to delete the command bar also because technically there's nothing now inside of it. I mean, I don't think technically it will, but it's not going to be displayed. So if I do this, you'll notice my add-ins tab has now disappeared. So unfortunate, but that's basically what's the results of it. So at this point, though, we actually have finished the video. So if you have any questions about how to add controls, customize controls, anything along that nature, please put them down in the comments below, and I will try to get back to you. Also, if you could, please make sure to like the video. We always appreciate that support. And if you're not already, please make sure to subscribe to the channel so that way you get regular updates as we release new videos. So thank you again for watching, everybody. Kind of some upcoming videos. We're going to be talking about VBA classes, at least for our VBA series. There was something else. Oh, I think I was going to try to do SharePoint, like shared workspace objects, but that's a pain, to be honest. And I don't know if I can access it from my personal computer. So I got to see if there's a public one or something like that. And then connection strings. I was going to do connection strings too. So I'm going to try to show you how to connect to different data sources, but basically you only have that connection string. You're not necessarily like adding it to a query or anything, but just showing like, hey, this is how you would build those connection strings and things along that nature. Because connection strings can really be a messy really a messy task sometimes, and it's not fun, but it's definitely useful to kind of have under your belt. So that's kind of what's coming up next. Again, thank you for watching. We'll see you in the next video.